trying to get a handle on who we are, human identity, and really understand the massive challenges society faces today, it feels incredibly complex, doesn't it?
It really does.
It's like standing in front of a fire hose of information and conflicting ideas.
Absolutely. Finding a clear framework, some, solid ground to understand what's happening and why, that can be the biggest challenge itself.
Which brings us right to this deep dive. You've shared some fascinating source material with us, mainly drawing from a Baha'i perspective, focusing on something they call humanity's exalted station, right? And there's some analysis with it too.
Exactly. And what's presented in these sources, it's quite a striking comparison. They lay out this view of human nature that's fundamentally rooted in divine purpose and this immense potential.
Okay.
Then they use that view as a lens, really, to critically look at certain aspects of what they describe as modern Western civilization.
Specifically where secular materialism seems dominant.
Yes, exactly that. And they examine the consequences they see flowing from that particular worldview.
Got it. So our goal here for you listening is to really dive into these specific sources. We want to unpack this Baha'i perspective on humanity's high station, explore the critique they offer of, certain modern trends, and see what alternative path they might suggest.
It's all about taking these ideas and seeing what important insights they hold for you as you kind of navigate the world.
Right. Let's start with that foundation then, this idea in the sources about humanity's inherent nature, its exalted station.
Okay. So the sources, they get right to it. They start by saying, humanity isn't random. It's a purposeful creation. There's intention behind it.
Okay. Purposeful.
Yeah. There's that specific quote. Thou didst create me, O Lord, to know thee and to worship thee. So right away, human existence is grounded in something spiritual, intentional.
That sets a very different stage than, say, a purely biological view.
Definitely. And what's really compelling is how this purpose connects to this incredible potential, even if it's often, unrealized. The sources use these really vivid analogies.
Like what?
Well, they say, man is the supreme talisman. But then they add, lack of a proper education hath, however, deprived him of that which he doth inherently possess.
A supreme talisman, but needs education. Interesting.
And there's another one, maybe even more striking. Regard man as a mine rich in gems of inestimable value. Education can alone cause it to reveal its treasures.
A mine rich in gems. Wow. Okay, so the core idea here from these sources is that humans aren't just complex animals. We're seen as packed with these inherent invaluable capacities.
Right.
Gems. And this seems crucial, these gems aren't just automatically there and shining. They need work, they need development, specifically education.
Education is the key to unlock them.
It's a view where being human means having this deep, latent worth that's just waiting to be brought out.
And importantly, unlocking your own gems isn't just for you. The sources tie it directly to a collective purpose. They state it plainly. All men have been created to carry forward an ever-advancing civilization. So our individual potential is meant to build something bigger, something progressive for everyone.
So individual development fuels collective progress. Makes sense within that framework.
And humanity itself is positioned as central to the whole point of creation in this view. There's the quote, "The world of existence is like unto a tree, and man is like unto the fruit of that tree."
The fruit of the tree. That really puts humanity, at the culmination point, doesn't it? The intended outcome.
It's a powerful image, yeah. And how that fruit finds its real worth or fulfillment isn't through, say, accumulating power or riches. It's through contribution.
Contribution.
The source stresses the honor and distinction of the individual consist in this, that he, among all the world's multitudes, should become a source of social good. True honor comes from benefiting society.
Becoming a source of social good. That's where nobility lies, according to this perspective. It offers a very clear moral compass then.
It does.
And within this picture, what do they identify as the main roadblock? The thing preventing us from reaching this potential, from being that source of good?
It seems to boil down to ignorance.
Ignorance.
Yes, that's a really key point in the material. It says the root cause of wrongdoing is ignorance. So bad actions aren't framed as just innate evil, but more like a deficiency.
A lack of knowledge.
A lack of the right knowledge and education, the kind needed to reveal those inner gems and understand our true station and purpose.
Okay. So if ignorance is the root cause, then the implication is that knowledge, understanding, education, that's the fundamental fix for problems, both individual and societal.
That seems to be the direct line of reasoning. But the sources also warn about a major threat to this whole vision.
Which is?
They connect it to moral relativism. They worry about the foundations of shared ethics eroding. There's a line, "The weakening of the pillars of religion hath strengthened the foolish."
So the idea is that without some shared sense of objective truth, maybe divine guidance, society becomes more vulnerable to chaos or maybe destructive ideas.
That's the concern expressed, that things unravel without those pillars.
And they use that lamp analogy, right, to show the relationship between material stuff and the spiritual foundation.
Yes, that's a really central one. Comparing civilization to a lamp. Material civilization is like a lamp glass. Divine civilization is the lamp itself.
Okay.
Without the light of the lamp, the glass alone is useless. So all our impressive external achievements, science, technology, infrastructure, that's the glass they're ultimately empty or directionless. Without the spiritual light, the divine civilization inside.
The form is there, but it's hollow without the meaning, the guidance, the light.
Exactly. The glass doesn't do much good in the dark.
Okay. So summarizing this first part from the sources. We have humanity seen as inherently noble, purposeful, like a mine full of gems needing education, intended for collective progress, for social good, but very vulnerable to ignorance and also to the danger of losing that spiritual anchor, which makes material success kind of pointless.
That captures the essence of that foundational view. And it's from that perspective, having established this potential and purpose, that the source's analysis then turns a critical eye towards modern Western civilization.
Right. Using that Baha'i framework to look at the consequences, psychological, sociological, that they see coming from a dominant secular materialist worldview.
Precisely.
Okay, let's dig into that. Psychologically, what do the sources suggest happens when this idea of divine purpose or inherent spiritual value gets dismissed or lost?
Well, the analysis links it directly to a kind of existential confusion, a deep loss of meaning.
Like, what's the point? Kind of feeling.
Sort of, yeah. They even bring in connections to modern psychology, thinkers like Viktor Frankl, suggesting that without some kind of transcendent purpose, people can easily drift into despair. Or, on the flip side, maybe into hedonism, just chasing pleasure, because there's no deeper why guiding things.
That makes intuitive sense. If there's no bigger picture, defining value and direction gets incredibly difficult.
Definitely.
And this loss of a spiritual anchor, the analysis argues, also fuels things like moral relativism and maybe inner conflict.
Exactly that. The analysis contends that when those objective moral standards weaken, society, often pushed by media, popular culture, Hollywood gets mentioned, starts to normalize behaviors that maybe people instinctively feel are harmful or wrong.
Examples.
Things like maybe glorifying certain kinds of exploitation or violence or just general moral ambiguity. This creates what they call cognitive dissonance.
Okay.
That clash between maybe an inner moral compass and the outside message saying, oh, this is fine, this is normal, this is progressive. It leads to confusion, inner fragmentation. People aren't sure what's really right anymore.
Fragmentation of the self, that sounds pretty serious, like a heavy personal cost.
It does. The sources suggest that without that solid spiritual foundation or an objective moral framework, our sense of identity becomes really fluid, maybe unstable, vulnerable.
And that leads to...
Well, the argument is this instability contributes to things we see a lot of today, anxiety, depression, and also this desperate search for meaning or validation in, frankly, artificial places.
Like what?
Like relentless consumerism trying to buy happiness or identity, or chasing fame, seeking external validation through likes and followers, or even retreating into extremist ideologies that offer simple answers.
It's an attempt to fill a spiritual void, basically.
That's how the analysis presents it, yes. An attempt to fill that void left when the connection to inherent spiritual purpose is lost.
Okay, so that covers the psychological impacts described in the sources. What about the effects on society as a whole? The sociological consequences they see?
On the bigger societal level, the analysis argues this same mindset contributes to the weakening, even the breakdown, of really fundamental social structures.
You mean like family, community?
Precisely. The suggestion is that when objective moral values erode and extreme individualism prioritizes freedom from any restraint, trust just diminishes.
How does that affect families, according to this view?
Well, they suggest the traditional sanctity of marriage weakens, for example, and the sources express concern that this leaves children without clear moral guidance, without those anchors they need.
And communities.
Communities, which really depend on shared values and a sense of mutual obligation, they also tend to fragment when that shared foundation dissolves.
And they specifically call out consumerism, right? Almost like it becomes a substitute religion.
Yeah, the analysis uses pretty strong language there. It views materialism as effectively replacing spirituality for many. It turns people into, well, they describe it as being sort of enslaved.
Enslaved? By what?
By fleeting trends, by brand loyalties, by the constant chase for superficial external validation like measuring your self-worth by social media likes or comments.
Enslaved by social media likes. That's a pretty stark way to put it.
It is. And there's this other concept they discuss which sounds paradoxical, the tyranny of liberty.
Tyranny of liberty. How can liberty be tyrannical?
Well, the sources make a critical distinction here between two different ideas of freedom. From their perspective, true liberty is defined as the freedom to obey God's laws.
Freedom to obey.
Yes, meaning the freedom to align yourself with a higher, divinely revealed moral code, which they see as ultimately liberating because it guides you towards your true potential and purpose.
Okay, so that's one kind of freedom. What's the other?
They contrast that sharply with what they describe as the common modern concept of liberty, which is freedom from all external restraints. Basically, license, do whatever you want, as long as it doesn't directly hurt someone else, maybe.
Ah, I see. So this license-based freedom, in this view, isn't really freedom. It can actually lead to decay.
That's the argument presented, that this kind of unrestrained liberty, this license, leads to societal decay and internal chaos because it lacks that grounding, that positive direction. It's freedom from responsibility, from limits, rather than freedom to achieve something inherently good and purposeful.
Makes sense in their framework. And they point fingers at media, Hollywood specifically, for promoting this license view.
Yes, the analysis specifically calls out the role of media and entertainment in pushing this license-based view and normalizing behaviors the sources consider destructive.
Oh, by doing what?
By, as the analysis suggests, glorifying things like violence or exploitation, maybe moral ambiguity. Essentially making things that were once considered taboo or harmful seem edgy, progressive, or just acceptable everyday life.
So normalizing, desensitizing people.
Exactly. The argument is that this actively shapes the culture, chips away at traditional ethical boundaries, and leaves society struggling to tell right from wrong, good from bad.
Okay, wow. So we've journeyed through this Baha'i perspective on humanity's potential, the mind of gems idea, and then the sources analysis of the pretty significant psychological and sociological challenges they see coming from secular materialism. It paints a picture of a problem rooted in fundamentally neglecting or misunderstanding our true human nature.
That's a fair summary.
So what's the way out? What alternative or remedy do these sources actually propose?
Well, the path forward suggested in these Baha'i writings, it involves a pretty fundamental reorientation. It's not just tinkering around the edges.
Okay, like what?
First, it really emphasizes balancing education, not just material knowledge, facts, skills, but consciously integrating spiritual education alongside it.
Ah, so recognizing that unlocking those inherent gems requires nurturing both the mind and the spirit, not either.
Precisely. Both are needed. And second, establishing a divinely guided morality.
Divinely guided. How does that work? Is it rigid?
The sources argue for the necessity of objective moral truths derived from revelation, not as sort of rigid, stifling dogma, but as essential guiding principles. Principles needed to protect society from the very chaos and fragmentation that they argue unchecked moral relativism creates.
So it provides that stable foundation, that shared understanding of right and wrong that the analysis suggests is missing in a purely secular approach.
That's the idea, a reliable compass. And third, crucially, promoting the unity of humanity.
Unity. How does that fit in?
Well, if you start from the premise that all individuals are like mines holding the same precious gems,
Right.
and that all people were created to carry forward one ever-advancing civilization, then overcoming all the things that divide us, prejudice, nationalism, divisive ideologies, it's not just a nice ideal.
It becomes essential.
It becomes logically essential for any real progress. And the tools for that are seen as love, justice, and really recognizing that fundamental oneness.
It follows directly from their core view of human nature and purpose. It all connects back.
It does. And importantly, the sources don't just present this as a theoretical fix. They offer a sense of hope, too.
Hope. In what way?
There's a mention of the darkness of error that has enveloped the East and the West is, in this most great cycle, being scattered.
Being scattered.
Yes.
Suggesting it's already happening.
It suggests a belief that this shift towards balancing the material and spiritual, towards recognizing unity, isn't just something we should do, but a process they believe is actively, albeit maybe slowly, unfolding in the world right now.
That's a powerful and hopeful way to frame it. Okay, so let's try and bring this deep dive together for everyone listening.
Sounds good.
The sources you share present this really distinct view of humanity. One rooted in divine purpose, inherent value, immense potential, that mine of gems idea.
Yes.
Then using that viewpoint, they offer a pretty sharp critique of certain aspects of modern life, specifically those driven by what they call secular materialism.
Yeah.
Arguing this leads to serious problems.
Yeah.
Psychological ones like loss of meaning, moral confusion.
And sociological ones like breakdown of community, enslavement to consumerism, that kind of thing.
Right. And they counter this with a proposed path forward. One based on balancing our material and spiritual education.
Grounding ourselves in a divinely guided morality.
And fundamentally embracing the principle of the unity of humanity.
That's the core contrast presented.
So, as you listening, reflect on these contrasting perspectives, this vision of humanity's inherent potential versus the challenges outlined in the analysis. Maybe think about how these different frameworks could help you make sense of things, dynamics you see playing out in the world, maybe even in your own life.
It's really about offering you some lenses, some different ways to process that fire hose of information we mentioned at the start.
Exactly. Lenses to see through.
And maybe building on that powerful idea of humanity as a mine rich in gems needing education. Here's a final thought from these sources for you to ponder.
Okay.
What does it practically mean, maybe in your daily life, your choices, your interactions, to actively cultivate those inner gems? Not just by learning stuff, but by consciously seeking harmony between what the sources call reason and revelation. How might seeking that balance help you navigate the very real complexities and challenges of today's world?